Greetings, YouTube. As many people are aware, we are coming up on the election cycle for the midterm elections here in the United States. In fact, I have a primary election tomorrow here in the state of New Hampshire. And I will be doing my civic duty, stopping and picking up my wife as I come home from work. And we'll go hit the polls early, get it out of the way, so I can come home and have breakfast. And because of this, there are lots and lots of political ads out there. And a lot of the conservative ads have used the same phrase, besides cutting taxes and slashing spending, which seems to be their two main themes. A recurring phrase, however, is they want to take back America. And this confuses me, because if you vote in the United States, that means you're a U.S. citizen. The U.S. hasn't been occupied by a foreign government in a really long time. I don't think with any success since the War of 1812. So, who are they actually discussing when they use the terms "take back America"? Who are they taking it back from? The only people who are voting in this whole process are fellow Americans. Now, they may be members of a different political party or a different political slant, but they're still Americans, so there really isn't anyone to take it back from. And yet they keep using this phrase over and over again. I just heard it last night when, was it Binney, I think, who was the person doing an ad here in New Hampshire, and desperately trying to get people to hop on board his bandwagon so that he can actually be the person running for election come November. And it still confuses me. Now, you see, I think the implication is that there are people in America, legal U.S. citizens who are voting, who don't have America's best interest in mind. And I can agree with that. I believe that there are Americans who have the legal right to vote, and they really don't have America's best interest in mind. And I call those people conservatives. I have never seen a political platform based so soundly on self-centered, short-sighted, selfish attitudes as the conservative point of view. Yes, I know. People are going to say, well, you're casting aspersions. Well, I'm not talking about particular party members here. You could be a Democrat, you could be a Republican, you could be a member of the Tea Party if you'd like. But the reality is that there are conservatives in all of these political groups, and the conservative point of view is very self-centered. It's very short-sighted. It's about the next quarter, the next election cycle. And that's about as far as they think in advance. They're not thinking long-term. They're not making plans looking in 10, 20, 30 years down the road, which is the time frame you really need to be thinking about. You need to be thinking about what's going to happen 30 years from now from the actions that we take today, and how have we been adversely affected today by the political processes that had been started 30 years ago. But the conservatives don't think about that. All they care about is making sure that this quarter's profits are high, that there are enough tax cuts for the wealthy, and that the poor people get as little funding as possible. And I'm opposed to all these things. I really would like a much more compassionate and well-balanced view of the world. I understand that I am not the only human being here, that my best interests really have to be aligned with the best interests of every other person in this country and every other person on the planet. We need to make sure that everybody has what they need to survive, or we're not going to make it as a people or a species. I accept this as a given. You can't have an incredibly small group of people who are uber wealthy and the rest of the planet being paupers. It's not going to work. Short term, it's just bad for everybody, and long term, it's bad for the rich people too, because eventually the paupers get tired of it, and then things get nasty. And I'd like to avoid that. I like to live in a world with the rule of law. I like to live in a world with nice, peaceful interactions. Where we vote on things, they get changed, and life for everyone improves. But if you try concentrating all the wealth into a really small segment of society at the expense of everyone else, eventually those everyone else's get tired of it. And if we don't adopt social guidelines now to make sure that the wealth is not concentrated like that, I'm thinking that eventually, hopefully long after I'm gone, there will be revolution. And I'd like to avoid that, because every other kind of revolution like this in the past has been long, bloody, chaotic, and it has done absolutely nothing to improve the lives of anybody involved. Because eventually it all collapses and starts all over again. So why don't we do it intelligently, with a plan? Why don't we just sit back, look at the world around us, and say, hey, let's learn from the mistakes of others. Let's see how other countries have done things, pick the things that we like, don't pick the things that we don't, and adopt those policies, which is why I'm an advocate of European-style socialist policies, because lots of European countries have solved a lot of the problems that America currently has, and we need to get on board with that. Rampant, unrestricted capitalism is not the answer. So when someone says, taking back America, well, I want to put America into the hands of Americans. I want our voters to be the people in charge of our country. I don't want the corporations to be in charge. I don't want the uber-rich, the plutarchs out there, the 2% that own the rest of the country, to be in charge. I want the common American to be in charge. I want to make sure that everyone who is a common American voter has the things they need to survive so that they can lead a fully functional, healthy life. Yes, I know that's radical speech here in America. But it's better for everyone involved. I know that the conservatives aren't going to believe me, but unrestrained capitalism is not healthy for us because the disparity of wealth between the highest and the lowest gets worse. The economy collapses. It happened in 1929. It happened in 2007. It's going to happen again unless we stop it. So I personally am not going to be voting for anyone who's a conservative. Tomorrow, I'll be voting for Democrats. Democrats who support a system that I agree with. And come November, I'll be voting for Democrats again who support a system that I agree with. And none of these people are going to be what's considered a conservative, because that position is not one that I think is defensible or realistic. So every time someone says taking back America, in some ways I kind of agree with them. See, I want to take it back, and I want to hand it to the American people. It's theirs, and they deserve it.